The humble maid never expected her world to turn upside down at work until she walked into Suite 203 and found the love of her life and the father of her child. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The lobby of the Grand Mayfair Hotel gleamed under the midday sun, its marble floors polished to a mirror sheen and a regal staircase curving upwards toward the suites above. Marta, dressed in her modest maid's uniform, hurried across the expanse of the foyer, trying to keep her heart from thumping too loudly in her chest. Just moments earlier, the head housekeeper had informed her that a VIP guest would be occupying Suite 203, and she was assigned to handle the housekeeping personally. Normally, this wouldn't be cause for alarm. Marta had been the most efficient maid on the staff since her first day, known for her impeccable standards. But there was something about the hush in the air, the way the head housekeeper refused to meet her eyes, that made her palms sweat. In her arms, she carried fresh sheets with crisp edges, a set of thick towels so white they seemed luminous, and tiny vials of the most fragrant toiletries. She took quick, careful steps, conscious not to slip on the polished marble. The overhead chandelier cast prisms of light across her face, stinging her eyes, or perhaps it was the anxiety building inside her. She tried to remind herself that she was simply doing her job, fulfilling her duties as she did every day. Yet deep within her, a faint whisper of dread nagged at her heart. It was as though she sensed that life at the Grand Mayfair was about to change forever. Around her, guests bustled with the usual vacation giddiness or business-like urgency. Wealthy couples with suitcases that glittered with brand-name monograms swept by, accompanied by bellhops in starched uniforms. Marta had grown accustomed to moving among them like a ghost, unnoticed, invisible, a role she normally found oddly comforting. In that anonymity, she could focus on her tasks without complication. But today, for reasons she could not yet explain, she felt each gaze, each step, each movement of the crowd as if it were magnified. Somewhere in the recesses of her mind, an old memory stirred. Could it be anxiety from the rumors swirling around the staff break room earlier that morning? One of the new hires had whispered about a certain powerful family sending someone important to stay in the famed suite, though she'd dismissed it at the time. In 8 years of working at the Grand Mayfair, Marta had seen diplomats, foreign royalty, celebrities, and tycoons come and go. Why would this be any different? She took the elevator up, pressing the button for the second floor. The polished interior walls reflected her own tired face. Beneath her dark eyes lay faint shadows of worry and exhaustion. How many nights had she lain awake, thinking about her son, Matteo? He was only 6 years old, a bright child who spent weekdays at her sister's place, so Marta could work long shifts. She was a single mother in every sense of the word. Matteo's father had vanished soon after discovering that Marta was pregnant, leaving behind a swirl of unanswered questions and heartbreak. No messages, no letters, no phone calls. Still, Marta had forged ahead, cradling her son when he was sick and whispering stories to soothe his tears, telling him everything would be all right. Through the years, she had forced herself to bury any illusions of reconciling with the man who'd once claimed to love her. The elevator chimed softly at the second floor, and Marta's stomach did a small flip. She adjusted her housekeeping cart, making sure each bottle and rag was in its rightful place. She walked down the hushed corridor, the plush carpeting absorbing the sounds of her footsteps. Framed artwork lined the walls, classical paintings in heavy gilded frames, but she noticed none of them. Her attention locked on the brass numbers gleaming on each door: 199, 200, 201. At last, she reached 203. Her heart pounded as she prepared to slide the keycard. A strange sense of déjà vu washed over her, but she couldn't place why. She breathed in and out, reminding herself that this was just another part of her daily routine. She gently rapped her knuckles on the door and called out in a calm, professional tone, "Housekeeping!" No response came from within the suite. Usually that was her cue to let herself in. She opened the door carefully. The suite was awash in midday light, filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Everything seemed in pristine condition, though a suitcase lay open on the luggage rack, clothes folded with crisp precision. An expensive cologne lingered in the air, woodsy, with a hint of spice that jolted her memory. Marta felt an odd prickle down her spine. She recognized that scent. It was the same brand the father of her child used to wear, back in those days when they would stroll by the pier, laughing about the future and dreaming naive dreams. Her breath quickened. To steady herself, she moved to the bedroom, intending to replace the bedspread and freshen the pillows. The bed was immaculate, the occupant evidently neat or scarcely having used the room. A large business folder rested on the bedside table, partially opened, revealing thick, glossy documents. On top, bold letters spelled out a last name she knew all too well: Salazar. She froze, a wave of memory crashing over her. That name was seared into her past, bound to her heartbreak, to the nights she consoled her crying infant. Vicente Salazar had always insisted that the child wasn't his responsibility, but of course that had been years ago. It was no coincidence that the suite occupant carried that name. Blood rushed to her ears, a cacophony of pulse beating in her head. She almost didn't hear the faint click of the door opening again until it was too late. She swung around, sheets still clutched in her arms. And there he stood, Vicente himself, tall, distinguished, dressed in a tailored suit that likely cost more than her entire month's wages. His dark hair was neatly combed back, his eyes instantly locking with hers. They widened in shock as if he'd seen a ghost. Or perhaps, she thought bitterly, as if he'd hoped never to see her again. Marta? The name slipped from his lips, barely above a whisper. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her voice caught in her throat, the same throat that had choked back tears so many times before. All the anger she'd bottled up, all the questions that had haunted her, threatened to come pouring out at once, but she clenched her jaw, steeling herself to remain calm. He took a cautious step forward, confusion and a flicker of regret etched across his face. I had no idea you worked here." Words tumbled from his mouth, each sounding more hollow than the last. "It's been years." She collected herself enough to stand straighter, remembering that she was on duty, in uniform, bound by the codes of courtesy the hotel demanded. She tried to smooth down her apron. "Yes, it has," she managed at last. 1,000 questions tried to force themselves to the surface. Why didn't you come back? Did you ever think of Mateo? Did you ever regret walking away? But her dignity prevailed. She refused to beg for answers from the man who'd abandoned her in her most vulnerable moment. Vicente looked around, perhaps realizing that confrontation in the middle of the suite was not only awkward, but also easily overheard by passing staff or guests. "Marta, please, maybe we can talk somewhere." She took a step back. "I have work to do," she said quietly, the polite words trembling at the edges. "If you'll excuse me, sir." For a fleeting second, an expression of hurt flashed over his features at her calling him sir. But Marta refused to feel pity for him. She brushed past him, stepping into the living area, half expecting him to grab her arm or shout after her. Instead, he remained rooted to the spot, the tension swirling around them like a storm on the verge of breaking. She lowered her eyes, praying her chest wouldn't betray the rapid pounding of her heart. But as she placed the fresh towels on the coffee table, the memory of that cologne, the memory of those arms that once held her, overcame her. She recalled how safe she'd once felt, lulled by his laughter and swayed by his promises. Then, in a single cruel moment, he had turned his back on her. There was a child in the equation he had never even bothered to meet. Silence stretched inside Suite 203. The hush broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. Vicente cleared his throat, his voice subdued. I'm sorry. He said it so faintly, she wondered if she'd imagined it. Slowly, he moved closer, careful not to make any sudden motions. I know it's not enough. There's so much I need to... She set the towels down firmly, pivoting to face him. Emotions warred behind her tired eyes, but she refused to let her tears fall. Don't apologize. Not now. Not like this. Her professional composure cracked, revealing a glimpse of the hurt underneath. You have no idea what you left behind. And there it was, his face contorted as though he'd taken a physical blow. He knew. Of course he did, even if he'd never acknowledged it. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. Outside in the corridor, another maid's cart rattled by, a reminder that the world continued spinning. Marta inhaled deeply and stepped back, clutching the last vestige of her dignity. I have to finish the suite, she said, her voice trembling only slightly. Please let me do my job, Mr. Salazar. She said that last name as though it were an icy wall between them. In her mind, the name was the symbol of a man who once claimed to love her, yet vanished at the mention of responsibility. Vicente stared at her a moment longer, sorrow etched in every line of his face. Then, with a defeated nod, he slowly retreated to the bedroom, giving her space as though it were the only apology he could manage. As she continued to straighten the living area, Marta wondered what she would tell Mateo, if anything at all. Part of her screamed that she owed him the chance to know his father, but another part of her roared that this man had no right to disrupt their lives after so many years. The father of her child was only steps away, and yet the distance between them felt insurmountable. The remainder of her work shift felt like an eternity. Marta moved methodically through the upper floors, tending to rooms whose occupants had no idea of the emotional storm raging inside her. Each door she opened, each fresh set of sheets she laid out, was done in a daze. Normally, the motions soothed her. Housekeeping was straightforward. You saw a mess, you cleaned it, and the result was immediate. But she couldn't banish the image of Vicente's face or the softness in his voice when he said, I'm sorry. By the time she clocked out, dusk hovered over the city. The noise of traffic outside the Grand Mayfair Hotel blended with the hum of neon signs and the chatter of people on the sidewalks. Numbly, she removed her uniform in the staff changing room, slipping back into the simple blouse and skirt she wore home each day. As she shoved her work attire into her bag, a wave of exhaustion overtook her, more mental than physical. She made her usual quick exit through the employee's door and stepped into the cool evening. Almost reflexively, she caught sight of her reflection in a tinted window. Dark hair pulled into a low, practical bun, faint worry lines across her brow. She looked away, hastening her steps toward the bus stop. She'd promised her sister she would be back early enough to tuck Mateo in tonight. But the weight of Vicente's unexpected reappearance clung to her, and she struggled with a dozen unanswered questions. Why now? Where had he been all this time? Was his arrival here just a coincidence, or did he deliberately choose the Grand Mayfair, knowing she worked there? And if he had, what did he want? Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Pilar. Running late at work myself, sorry. Mateo's excited to see you, though. He's been talking about the stories you promised to read him. Marta's chest constricted with guilt. She was his mother, yet he spent more time with Pilar than with her. It was the only way to make ends meet, but she couldn't help feeling like she was missing precious moments she'd never get back. The bus arrived, hissing as it opened its doors. Marta boarded, found a seat by the window, and let her head rest against the glass. For a few stops, she closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the bus jolt her tired body. Yet every time she tried to drift off, she pictured Vicente's silhouette in Suite 203, his tone uncertain, his gaze remorseful. She told herself to forget it. 8 years of silence didn't vanish with a single apology. She owed him nothing. Yet another voice in her head reminded her of Matteo. He was already asking questions about his father, where he was, why he never came around, whether he'd see him someday. Marta had always managed to redirect the conversation or give a vague answer. She'd never wanted to dump her bitterness on a young child. And now, without warning, here was the man himself, possibly in the same building she entered every morning. As the bus neared her sister's neighborhood, a pang of nerves gripped her anew. What if Vicente tried to find out where she lived? What if he showed up unannounced one day wanting to meet Matteo? Did he have that right after abandoning them so completely? Trying to push down her growing anxiety, she got off at her stop and walked the few blocks to Pilar's apartment building. The streetlights were dim, several flickering in and out. At the corner, local kids played basketball under a single functioning lamp, and mothers sat on stoops chatting. It was a world away from the grandeur of the Grand Mayfair, but it was also home, the place where people knew her name. A moment later, the squeak of an old elevator delivered her to the third floor. She knocked softly on 3B, and Pilar opened the door with a relieved smile. "Oh, thank goodness, I was worried I'd be super late," she said, stepping aside so Marta could enter. "I still have a shift at the diner tonight. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," Marta replied, avoiding eye contact. The last thing she wanted was to delve into the day's revelation. Pilar sensed her sister's tension but decided not to pry in front of Matteo. "He's in the bedroom, busy coloring. I'll head out now. See you tomorrow?" "Sure," Marta said, "and thanks for everything, truly." Her sister nodded and left, leaving Marta alone. Taking a steadying breath, she moved into the small bedroom, where Matteo sat cross-legged on the floor, crayons scattered around him. A worn coloring book showed half-finished dinosaurs. He looked up, and his eyes lit with unmistakable joy. "Mommy!" The tension in Marta's chest lessened. She scooped him into her arms, kissing his cheek. "Hey, baby, how was your day?" Matteo gave an animated rundown of his afternoon, how he'd helped Pilar bake cookies, how he learned a new song at school, how he colored his favorite T-Rex green. He was a whirlwind of excitement, and Marta smiled, letting his childlike wonder distract her from her own burdens. They settled into a small routine. She warmed leftovers in the microwave and served them at the tiny kitchen table, asking him about every detail of his day. After dinner, she guided him through brushing his teeth, then tucked him under a thin blanket on the living room sofa, where he preferred to sleep when she stayed over. Budget constraints meant the apartment had only one bedroom, so when Marta slept here, she usually took the floor, letting Matteo have the couch. "I want 2 stories tonight," he said, trying to bargain with an impish grin. "All right," Marta agreed, though her voice shook slightly. "But only if you promise to close those eyes afterward." Matteo nodded fervently. She read him a silly story about a talking elephant, then another about a shy mermaid. He giggled at the parts he found funny, yawned at the parts he found comforting. By the end of the second story, his eyes fluttered shut. Quietly, she kissed his forehead and stepped away, slipping into the kitchen to wash the dishes. It was a routine she'd done 100 times, but tonight her mind was far away. The memories of Vicente intruded. How once, ages ago, she and Vicente would daydream about a life full of travel and success. His ambitions had been so large, and hers had been swept up in love, too naive to see the warnings. The dream ended the moment she confessed she was pregnant. She never saw him again, until today. The plates rattled in the sink as she tried to focus on scrubbing away food residue. She hated the warring emotions in her chest, anger laced with curiosity, heartbreak mixed with an odd sense of relief that she finally had the chance to see him again. Maybe now she'd get an answer, or maybe she'd be hurt all over again. She dried her hands, then moved to the couch where Matteo was already asleep. Sitting beside him on the floor, Marta gazed at her son, brushing a gentle hand over his hair. No matter what happened with Vicente, Matteo came first. And if there was one thing she was sure of, it was that she would do anything to protect him. Yet she wondered, if Mateo's father now wanted to reconnect, would that be best for her child? Or would it risk shattering the fragile security she'd worked so hard to provide? A chill ran through her at the thought of what fresh upheavals might lie ahead. She silently prayed for guidance, unsure whether the future held second chances or more heartbreak. One thing was certain: she was no longer the timid girl Vicente had left behind. She was stronger now, shaped by years of single motherhood and unrelenting work. If Vicente dared to disrupt her son's life, he'd have to face a woman unwilling to be cast aside again. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Pilar's living room, gently nudging Marta awake. She had fallen asleep on the floor next to the couch where Mateo slept, using her folded jacket as a makeshift pillow. As she sat up, her muscles protested. Every inch of her body ached from tension and a restless night. But she looked over at Mateo, peacefully dozing with his small fingers curled around a pillow, and felt a surge of warmth. He was oblivious to the storm of emotions she had battled in the quiet hours before dawn. Careful not to wake him, she tiptoed to the kitchen and started water boiling for coffee. The old kettle squeaked as it heated. With a sigh, she glanced at the clock on the wall. In less than an hour, she needed to be out the door to begin her morning shift at the Grand Mayfair Hotel. Normally, she would have woken with her mind already focused on the day's tasks: fresh linens for certain suites, time schedules for turn-down service, and any special requests from VIP guests. But now a single question overshadowed all else. Would Vicente try to see her again today? The memory of their encounter in Suite 203 flickered like a scene from someone else's life. Yet it was all too real, forcing her to confront how deeply his reappearance shook her. Pilar's door creaked open, and her sister emerged from the bedroom, still in pajamas. "Morning," Pilar said, rubbing her eyes. "I got back late. You slept okay?" "Managed," Marta answered quietly, not wanting to disturb Mateo. She tried to muster a convincing smile, but her sister's expression grew concerned. "You looked worried last night. I didn't want to pry with Mateo around," Pilar said. "Is everything all right?" Marta hesitated. She typically kept painful details locked inside, but the heavy weight in her chest compelled her to speak. "He's back," she whispered. Pilar's eyes widened. "You mean—" Marta nodded. "Vicente, he's staying at the hotel. I found him in Suite 203 yesterday." For a few seconds, Pilar said nothing, just stared in shock. She knew how much Marta had suffered: long nights of tears, desperation, and the stress of raising a child alone. Finally, Pilar exhaled, her voice shaking with protective anger. "So, after all these years, he shows up out of nowhere in your workplace? The nerve of that man." Marta swallowed hard. "He said he didn't know I was there, but—" She trailed off, uncertain whether to believe that or not. "I don't know what he wants. I don't even know how to feel." Pilar placed a comforting hand on her sister's shoulder. "Do you think he'll try to reach out again?" "I suspect so," Marta admitted. "It's not like he came to me with any explanation, not yet. He just apologized, and I left before we could say much, but I can't get rid of this knot in my stomach." Pilar nodded, then glanced at the living room where Mateo slept. "Does he know about—" Marta's voice dropped to a whisper. "He knows, Pilar. He always knew. That's what hurts the most." They exchanged a pained look. Then Marta straightened. "I have to get ready for work. She sighed. "I'm going to do my job. If he tries to speak to me, I'll decide how much I want to hear. But I won't let him disrupt Mateo's life, not unless it's for the boy's good." With that, she finished preparing coffee, took a quick shower, and dressed in a simple blouse and slacks before packing her maid's uniform in a small bag. She scribbled a note for Mateo, an "I love you" message with a promise to pick him up after school, then hugged Pilar goodbye. Stepping outside, she braced herself for the day. The bus ride to the hotel felt shorter than usual. She stared out the window at the city rushing by, shops opening their shutters, food carts setting up on corners, parents hurrying children to school. All around her, life moved on. That was how it should be. She couldn't let one man's sudden re-entry shatter the hard-earned stability she'd built. At the Grand Mayfair, the lobby buzzed with morning arrivals. Marta signed in at the staff room, pinned on her name tag, and hurried through the corridors to begin her assignments. She was determined to focus on the tasks at hand, replenishing mini-fridges, refreshing linens, dusting surfaces. Yet, with every step, she wondered if she'd bump into Vicente turning a corner. Eventually, fate tested her resolve. Just as she was wheeling her housekeeping cart toward the storage closet near the VIP suites, she heard someone clear his throat behind her. She turned, heart pounding. It was Vicente, standing a few paces away, his posture tentative. He was dressed in a crisp shirt and tailored slacks, a jacket draped over one arm. The morning light from a nearby window highlighted subtle lines of fatigue on his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hush was palpable. Two housekeepers passed by, pretending not to notice the tension. Marta fought the urge to flee. Instead, she kept her voice steady. "Mr. Salazar, I'm working." He winced at the formality. "I know. I'm sorry to approach you like this. He swallowed. "I wanted to see if we could talk. Outside of your shift. Maybe over coffee or—" She shook her head, cutting him off. "This isn't the time or place." Vicente's gaze flickered with guilt. "You're right, but I'll be here all week. If you'd give me even a few minutes, I could explain." "Explain what, exactly? How you left and never came back?" She wanted to keep her voice low, but it trembled with raw emotion. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I don't expect forgiveness. There's so much I regret, so many mistakes I've made, but please, let me at least talk to you. You deserve to know the truth." Marta's jaw tightened. "The truth is you vanished when I needed you most." She clutched the handle of her housekeeping cart, her knuckles white. "I don't see what else there is to say." A flicker of pain crossed his face. I understand," he murmured. "But I can't leave this city without trying to make amends, or at least giving you clarity. Let me make it up to you, or let me do something for him." Hearing him almost mention Mateo caused a spike of panic and protectiveness to surge within her. She immediately shifted her cart, blocking his path if he tried to come closer. "Mateo doesn't know you exist," she said, her voice shaking. "I wanted to protect him from heartbreak. I won't let you confuse him now." Vicente flinched, but he nodded. "I understand. But if you change your mind and want me to see him, or even just to help you financially, I'm not walking away again." For a second, Marta almost believed the raw sincerity in his tone, but memory and hurt loomed too large. She let out a slow breath. "I have to finish my rounds," she said. Without waiting for his response, she turned and pushed her cart past him. Her heart hammered as she retreated, forced to keep her composure in the busy corridor. Behind her, she sensed Vicente lingering, perhaps searching for the right words or maybe lingering in regret. But she kept moving, turning the corner. She needed space to think, space to breathe. Inside the storage closet, she shut the door behind her and leaned against it, letting out a silent sob. Why did seeing him again tear open wounds she'd spent years stitching closed? Why did the compassion in his eyes make her feel almost guilty for shutting him out? She wasn't the one who had left. She wasn't the one who broke promises and shattered a little boy's chance to know his father. Eventually, she wiped her eyes, reminding herself she was on the clock. Gathering a stack of fresh bath towels, she composed her face into professional calm and stepped back into the hallway. There was no place for heartbreak here. She had a job to do, and a child who needed her to stay strong. For the rest of the shift, Marta avoided the VIP corridor, trading tasks with a friendly coworker who owed her a favor. It was a temporary solution. Sooner or later, she'd have to face Suite 203 again. But for today, It gave her a small reprieve. She focused on rooms where business travelers had already vacated, meticulous in her cleaning, letting the mechanical process distract her from the chaos in her heart. By the end of the day, she was bone-tired. As she clocked out, she wondered if Vicente was still in his suite or if he'd stepped out. Then she chided herself for thinking about him. He might be outside waiting to ambush her with more words of remorse. The tension coiled in her stomach at the thought. She took a different exit this time, a side door typically used by service staff, exhaling in relief when she saw no sign of him. As the door clicked shut behind her, she felt a minuscule sense of victory. At least he hadn't cornered her again. The bus ride home was a blur. She kept replaying the conversation in the corridor. His voice, his eyes, the way he said he wasn't walking away again. But was it too late for redemption? Did she even want to hear him out? That evening, after picking up Mateo from school and returning to Pilar's apartment, she tried to put on a brave face. Her son enthusiastically recounted his day, how he'd played soccer during recess, how he aced a spelling quiz, and Marta responded with smiles and nods, feigning an energy she didn't feel. Yet after dinner, as she and Mateo settled on the living room couch to watch an old cartoon, the boy peered up at her. "Mommy, are you sad?" he asked plainly. She swallowed. "No, sweetheart. I'm just tired. Long day at work." He leaned his head on her shoulder. "I like when you're happy," he said innocently. "I know," she whispered, hugging him close. "I'll be okay, I promise." She wished she could stay in that moment forever, her arms wrapped around her child, the glow of the TV painting the walls in soft light, the world and all its heartbreak held at bay. But deep in her mind, she knew it was only a matter of time before she had to decide how to handle Vicente's return. A restless night passed again for Marta, caught between exhaustion and the ceaseless whirl of her thoughts. By dawn, she felt she'd hardly slept. Even so, responsibilities awaited. She rose, checked on Mateo, still sleeping soundly, and began the day's routine as quietly as possible so as not to wake him. By the time she arrived at the Grand Mayfair Hotel, morning sunlight streamed in through the tall glass doors, reflecting off gleaming floors. In the staff changing room, she exchanged polite nods with a few co-workers who were already buzzing about the day's tasks. One of them, Clara, a maid who had started the same year as Marta, caught her arm as she was about to leave. "Hey, are you okay?" Clara asked with genuine concern. "You seem tense lately." Marta forced a small smile. "Just tired. This job can be a lot sometimes." Clara regarded her knowingly. "I know we don't talk much about personal stuff, but if you need an ear—" "I appreciate it," Marta said softly, feeling the faint warmth of camaraderie. "I'll be fine." She didn't dare reveal any more. Gossip traveled fast, and if word spread about her connection to a VIP guest, it could spiral out of control. Soon, she was pushing her housekeeping cart down the corridor leading to another wing. She'd hoped to keep busy far from Suite 203 again, but the head housekeeper had posted the daily assignments, and Marta spotted her name clearly next to those dreaded numbers. Her heart squeezed. She could still try to trade with Clara or another co-worker, but that might raise suspicions. And deep down, Marta realized she was only delaying the inevitable. Vicente was still a guest, and at any moment, they could cross paths. Best face the duties head-on. Her footsteps sounded louder than usual as she navigated the plush carpet toward the VIP floor. The Grand Mayfair had 14 VIP suites, each done in its own opulent theme. Suite 203 boasted an understated but luxurious decor, perfect for corporate moguls and wealthy businessmen who favored calm over gaudy excess. As she approached, she rehearsed what she'd do if Vicente was inside or if he opened the door. She'd maintain a professional demeanor, politely excuse herself, and leave if he tried to talk personal matters. Hand on the keycard, she knocked. "Housekeeping," she called in her polite, practiced tone. Silence. She knocked again, still no response. Slowly, she unlocked the door and pushed it open. The drapes were closed, the suite in muted light. Immediately she noticed the bed was untouched, meticulously neat. The thought crossed her mind. Maybe Vicente hadn't returned last night. Part of her felt relief, another part felt an unsettling pang of disappointment. Brushing that aside, she stepped inside to perform a standard check. Her gaze landed on the desk in the living area. A folder lay open, documents haphazardly scattered across the surface. That alone told her Vicente must have been here at some point, maybe early this morning. Whether he'd be back soon was anyone's guess. She approached the desk slowly. Her duty was to tidy up, but her heart thundered in her chest. The topmost paper caught her eye. Some kind of contract. She recognized Vicente's name and signature at the bottom. Then a second signature, an unfamiliar name, but next to it, a notable company emblem. She furrowed her brow. Salazar Industries. She'd heard rumors about them, powerful in the corporate world, rumored to be expanding into new markets. Perhaps that was his reason for traveling here? A voice in her mind scolded her for snooping, so she carefully straightened the papers without reading further. It wasn't her place. She cleaned any stray coffee cups and tissues, replaced used toiletries, and restocked fresh towels. In a matter of minutes, the suite was once more immaculate. She stood in the living room, surveying the results. Everything was in order. She could leave with no further fuss. Yet her feet remained rooted. The quiet of the suite pressed in on her. She glanced at the bedroom, its stillness echoing her own emotional turmoil. He was gone now, or out at some meeting. For a moment she battled the temptation to linger, to search for a clue about what had driven him away all those years ago, or what had finally brought him back. But that path felt slippery. She wouldn't violate her professional ethics, nor risk stirring up more anguish by reading his personal documents. She had to maintain her integrity. Finally, she took a breath and rolled her cart toward the door. Just as she placed her hand on the handle, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She frowned, wondering who could be calling during work hours. Checking the screen, she saw her sister's name. Anxiety flared. Pilar didn't usually call this early unless it was important. She answered quietly. "Hello?" "Marta." Pilar's voice came through in a hushed, urgent tone. "I'm sorry to bother you at work. I just got a message on my phone. Someone was asking about you." Her heart lurched. "Asking about me? Who?" I'm not sure," Pilar said, sounding uneasy. "He wouldn't say his name, just said he was looking for Marta, the mother of Mateo. Told me it was personal and urgent. I hung up." Marta swallowed, a sick feeling in her stomach. "It might be Vicente. Maybe he's trying to find my personal number." "It could be. I'm worried, though. He sounded off, not exactly friendly." A chill rippled across her skin. "All right. Don't engage if he calls again. I'll handle it. Just keep an eye on Mateo, okay?" "Of course," Pilar promised. "He's in school now, but I'll pick him up right after. You be careful." Ending the call, Marta leaned against the suite door, her mind spinning. If it was Vicente, why would he contact Pilar in a vague manner? And if it wasn't him, who else would be asking about her and her son? Fear mingled with confusion, and she realized that maybe she didn't know the full extent of Vicente's world, his connections, his enemies, or the reasons for his long absence. With shaky composure, she exited Suite 203. The corridor still buzzed with well-dressed guests, tourists, business types, staff bustling with trays of fresh flowers. She tried to slip into the background, focusing on finishing her tasks, but the phone call cast a dark cloud over her day. When her shift ended, Marta found herself hesitating again at which exit to use. A small voice in her head told her that if Vicente truly wanted to speak to her, he might be waiting near the staff door. But she couldn't avoid him forever, especially now that an unsettling phone call had cast new doubts. Maybe it really was him, or maybe it was someone else entirely. She needed answers. Steeling herself, she decided to exit through the main lobby. If he was outside, so be it. she'd face him. If not, she'd go straight to pick up Mateo from school. She tightened her grip on her bag and walked briskly through the posh reception area, head down, arms tense at her sides. The doorman swung the doors open for her. Street noise and warm sunshine washed over her. She scanned the sidewalk. Businessmen chatted into earpieces. A tourist snapped photos of the hotel's grand facade, and a line of taxis waited at the curb. No Vicente. She exhaled, a mixture of relief and frustration swirling in her chest. She'd barely stepped beyond the revolving doors when a voice called out, "Marta, wait!" Heart hammering, she spun around. It wasn't Vicente. Instead, she spotted a different man in a pressed suit, tall and broad-shouldered, crossing the pavement toward her with purposeful strides. His expression was serious, yet calm. Something about the way he carried himself radiated importance, or maybe intimidation. Alarm bells rang in her head. "Excuse me," she said, trying to move past him. He positioned himself in front of her, raising his hands as if to show he meant no harm. "I'm sorry, miss," he said. "My name is Gabriel Ortiz. I work for Salazar Industries." He retrieved a business card from his pocket, holding it out. "May we speak for a moment about Señor Vicente Salazar?" Marta's pulse soared. "I don't have anything to say. I'm busy." "It'll only take a minute," Gabriel pressed gently. "I've been instructed to deliver a message to you." She frowned, but caution tugged at her. "What message?" Gabriel glanced around, clearly not wanting to attract an audience. "Señor Salazar requests a meeting. He deeply regrets yesterday's encounter in the corridor, says he approached you at a bad time. He'd prefer to arrange something more private if you agree. He's willing to meet on neutral ground, any public cafe or restaurant you choose." Marta folded her arms, trying to steady her nerves. "And if I refuse?" Gabriel exhaled slowly. "He'll respect your decision, but he hopes you'll allow him the courtesy to explain his situation, including—" He hesitated, carefully choosing his words. "Why he left, and why he's back." Her mind shot to the suspicious phone call earlier. Had Vicente tried to contact Pilar indirectly, or was that an entirely separate matter? She stared at Gabriel, noticing a sincerity in his gaze. He didn't seem threatening, just polite and persistent. "Tell him, I'll think about it," she said at last. She didn't want to commit to anything, but she also needed a moment to get the upper hand. If she was going to meet Vicente, it would be on her terms. "If I decide yes, how do I reach him?" Gabriel offered the business card again. "My number's on there. Text or call anytime. I'll coordinate with Señor Salazar." Marta took the card gingerly. It felt heavy in her hand, or maybe that was her imagination. Without another word, she walked away, weaving through pedestrians as city traffic hummed around her. Her heart pounded, each beat echoing, "What now? What next?" She stashed the card in her bag, telling herself she might never use it. Yet the weight of her curiosity lingered. If Vicente truly had an explanation, part of her ached to hear it. Another part screamed that no excuse would ever mend what he'd done. By the time she neared Mateo's school, her temples throbbed with a dull headache. She stood outside the tall iron gates, scanning the sea of parents. Most chatted happily about weekend plans or upcoming soccer games. Marta, on the other hand, felt as though the entire world was shifting under her feet. When the final bell rang, a stream of kids burst from the doors, backpacks bouncing. Mateo was among them, beaming as he spotted Marta. He ran over, hugging her waist. "Mommy, guess what? I scored a goal at recess." She managed a smile. "That's great, sweetie." They started the walk back to Pilar's place, his animated chatter filling the gaps in her anxious thoughts. She nodded and made encouraging noises, only half listening. She was still reeling from the meeting with Gabriel Ortiz. Vicente wanted to see her, to talk, possibly to talk about Mateo. The idea both thrilled and terrified her. After a quick snack at home, she helped Mateo start his homework. He fiddled with colored pencils, doodling on the edges of his math sheet, while she stared at the business card on the coffee table. The name Gabriel Ortiz was embossed in elegant lettering. Beneath it, phone and email details, simple, straightforward, as if scheduling a meeting was the easiest thing in the world. Marta's phone vibrated, snapping her from her reverie. It was Pilar texting an update. No more weird calls, but stay alert. Could be nothing, but you never know. Love you. She typed back a quick, "Thanks, I will," and set the phone aside. Then, glancing at her son, she remembered the vow she'd made that morning. Protect him above all else. Vicente's reappearance might force her to break her silence about his father, or maybe she would continue to shield Mateo from him. She wasn't sure what was right. She only knew that Mateo deserved a stable, loving environment, and if Vicente threatened that in any way, she would slam the door shut, no matter how much it might ache to do so. "What's that, Mom?" Mateo asked suddenly, pointing at the business card on the table. She quickly picked it up, trying to sound casual. "Just something for work, sweetheart." She slipped it into her pocket, her heart pounding. A tiny voice inside her whispered that someday soon she might have to tell her son a little more of the truth. That he had a father somewhere in the city, that the father had reappeared, and that Marta, for once, wasn't certain what path was best. Late that night, while Mateo slept, Marta turned the card over and over in her hands. She replayed Vicente's words in the corridor, his remorse, his promise that he wouldn't walk away again. She thought about the cryptic phone call to Pilar, the mention of mother of Mateo, and felt uneasy. And she wondered if meeting him was a step forward or a step backward. In the end, she grabbed her phone, typed in the number from the card, and wrote a terse text. "Gabriel, this is Marta. I can spare a moment tomorrow after my shift, 4 p.m. at the cafe next to the hotel, 10 minutes. If Vicente's late, I leave." She hovered over the send button, breath shallow. Then, summoning courage, she tapped it. The die was cast. The next day dawned gray and overcast, matching Marta's anxious mood. She arrived at the Grand Mayfair Hotel more tired than ever, having spent the night tossing and turning. Although her body longed for rest, her mind was wide awake, fixated on the upcoming meeting she'd impulsively agreed to. During her shift, she kept glancing at the clock. Time seemed to crawl. She had planned to meet Vicente, and presumably Gabriel, at 4 o'clock in the small cafe situated a block away from the hotel's side entrance. A cozy place with a few outdoor tables and a quiet interior. In her text, she had made it clear she could only spare 10 minutes. Whether that would be enough or too long, she couldn't tell. Every so often her stomach twisted with doubts. Why am I even doing this? Will it change anything? Despite her restless thoughts, she performed her housekeeping duties with her usual diligence, ensuring everything was spotless. She was in and out of various rooms on the upper floors, restocking toiletries, collecting used linens. She also steeled herself against the possibility of running into Vicente in the corridors. That dreaded question pressed on her. If she saw him before the meeting, would it wreck her composure? Yet Vicente was nowhere to be found. As she passed Suite 203, she noticed the "Do Not Disturb" sign dangling from the handle, so she left it alone. The day's tasks carried her through a dozen other rooms, scrubbing sinks and vacuuming plush carpets, until at last she could clock out. Usually she would hurry to Pilar's apartment, greet Mateo, and dive into the usual evening routine. But this afternoon she took a different path, stepping through the staff exit with a tight knot in her chest. Marta paused on the sidewalk, inhaling the cool air. She'd chosen the cafe for its neutral atmosphere. It was close enough to be convenient, yet far enough that she could slip away quickly if needed. She was half hoping Vicente might not show up, except she suspected he would. Everything about his recent behavior suggested a man determined to talk, no matter the cost. A drizzle began as she walked the short distance, droplets catching on her hair and uniform. She pulled her jacket tight. At the cafe, The awning provided some shelter, though passers-by bustled around with umbrellas and hurried footsteps. Through the glass front, she spied a few patrons sipping coffee, and behind the counter, a barista steaming milk. Her pulse quickened. This was it. She stepped inside, scanning the room. Gabriel Ortiz stood off to one side near a small table by the window, looking perfectly composed in a suit without a single wrinkle. He noticed her immediately and gave a polite nod. Marta's gaze shifted. Next to him sat Vicente. He wore a simple gray jacket, not as formal as before, but still radiating that polished aura. As soon as his eyes fell on her, he started to rise from his chair, face a mixture of relief and caution. Marta hesitated for a split second, then squared her shoulders and approached. She remained standing, setting her bag down gently. Her posture was defensive, her expression carefully guarded. "I have 10 minutes," she announced. "Let's not waste them." Vicente nodded, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "Thank you for coming." Reluctantly, she lowered herself into the seat. Gabriel offered a respectful bow of his head. "Would you like anything to drink?" he asked, gesturing to the barista's station. "On the house." She shook her head. The idea of coffee turned her stomach, given her nerves. "No, thank you." Gabriel glanced at Vicente as if to confirm everything was in place, then looked back at Marta. "I'll leave you two to speak." Shh! Politely, he stepped away and positioned himself at the cafe counter, far enough to grant privacy, but close enough that Vicente could summon him if needed. Marta gripped the edge of the small table. Across from her, Vicente cleared his throat. The overhead lights revealed faint circles under his eyes, betraying a lack of sleep. I appreciate you coming," he said softly. "I know I've given you every reason to refuse." She didn't respond, just stared at him expectantly. Her expression told him to get on with it. He sighed. "All right, I'll be direct." His hands tightened over each other. 8 years ago, I left. I know you see that as abandonment. It was. I won't make excuses for it, but I'd like to explain the circumstances. Her pulse drummed in her ears, but she didn't speak. Taking that as permission, Vicente continued. "I was young, ambitious, reckless, working with my family company, traveling to close deals in different countries. When you got pregnant, it terrified me. My father was pressuring me to focus on the business. He threatened to cut off my position, my financial stability, if I got entangled in a scandal. He said a child out of wedlock would ruin my credibility." He swallowed. "I was weak and selfish. I listened to him, let him manipulate me. I told myself you'd be better off if I wasn't involved, believing it might spare you from family drama and constant scrutiny." The words hung in the air. Marta felt her nails digging into her palms. "So, you thought I'd be better off broke and alone? That's nonsense." A flicker of pain crossed his face. Yes, it was nonsense. At the time, I twisted it into justification. My father demanded I distance myself from you. He made me sign legal documents, disclaiming paternity. I was too cowardly to fight back. Marta drew in a shaky breath, her anger swirling. "And these documents, what did they say? That you had no responsibility for my child? That you washed your hands of me?" Vicente bowed his head. "Essentially, yes. And I hate myself for agreeing, but I was afraid. I had illusions that maybe you'd find someone who deserved you, someone who'd be better for you and the baby. It was all so naive." His voice trembled, and for a brief moment, Marta saw a glimmer of genuine regret. But she remembered the years of tears, the nights she had no money for formula, the exhaustion of single motherhood. "That's not an explanation," she said in a low voice. "It's a confession of how little you valued us." He nodded, eyes shining with remorse. "You're right. I can't deny I failed you both. Over the years, I kept telling myself that eventually I'd fix it, that I'd come back. But something always held me back: guilt, shame, and yes, my father's disapproval. I was a grown man letting him dictate my life until he died 3 months ago. Marta blinked, taken aback. She didn't know Vicente's father had passed. She recalled vaguely that the elder Salazar was rumored to be a domineering figure. "So now that he's gone, you decided to show up?" He exhaled. "In part, yes. With my father's death, I gained more control over Salazar Industries. I realized that no amount of business success can fix the hole I created. So I came here. For a contract, yes, but also to find you. I wanted to see if I could at least apologize in person, maybe try to make amends. I never expected you'd be working at the same hotel." Marta's emotions churned in a dizzying cocktail of anger, sorrow, and cautious relief. "Well, I'm not sure how much your apology changes. Matteo and I have gotten by without you for a long time." Vicente nodded. "I know, and you've done an incredible job, I'm sure. I'd like to know him if you allow it, not as a way to barge in and disrupt your life, but to—" His voice faltered. "Be part of my son's life, in whatever way you see fit." Her heart twisted at the word son. Hearing him call Matteo, that felt surreal, borderline invasive. "He doesn't know you exist," she repeated more softly. "I never told him your name, never showed him your picture. For years I was too hurt, too furious." Vicente sank back in his chair. "I understand if you want to keep it that way. If you never want me around, I'll go. But please know I'd like to be there for him, from helping financially to just letting him know he has a father." Marta eyed him warily. "And do you think you're father material? This isn't a game. Matteo's heart isn't something you pick up when it's convenient. If he meets you, you can't walk away again." His eyes glistened. "I know, and I won't. Whatever it takes, I'd stay. I'd prove myself, I swear." A surge of emotion threatened to choke her. She glanced at the cafe clock. 8 minutes had passed. She was nearing her self-imposed limit, but how could she end this conversation so abruptly? Her entire life stood on the cusp of another upheaval. She forced herself to remain calm, to be logical in the face of heartbreak. She clasped her hands together. "There's another thing," she said. "Yesterday someone called my sister, asking about me, asking about the mother of Matteo." It didn't sound friendly. "Was that you or someone from your business?" Vicente's brow furrowed. "Not me. I had no reason to call Pilar. Gabriel only contacted you at the hotel. Do you think it could be a misunderstanding?" "I'm not sure," Marta admitted. "All I know is that it felt uneasy, as if they were prying." A chill raced through her at the memory. "Does Salazar Industries have any enemies who might use me as leverage?" Vicente looked troubled. "It's possible there are competitors or rivals who might dig into personal affairs, especially now that I'm finalizing a big merger. But I'd never let them hurt you. I promise." She shook her head, unsettled. "I won't be dragged into corporate feuds. My only priority is Matteo's well-being." "I understand," Vicente replied, sounding sincere. "I'll look into it." A moment's silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. Outside, the drizzle intensified, pattering against the cafe windows. Nearby patrons sipped coffee, oblivious to the quiet drama playing out at this small table. Marta drew a breath. "My shift ended, and I need to get home soon. Matteo will be waiting." She glanced at the clock again. 10 minutes had almost elapsed. "I don't know what to do about you, Vicente. Part of me wants to slam the door and never look back. Another part wonders if it's fair to keep Matteo from knowing you, if you really want to be in his life." He leaned forward, voice earnest. "Let me show you I'm serious. Let me help with school fees, medical bills, anything you need, and if it feels right, maybe I could meet him. No pressure, no grand drama, just a father trying to connect." She studied him for a long moment, remembering the brash, charming young man who once stole her heart, and the heartbreak when he vanished. Now he seemed older, haunted, She saw regret etched in every line of his face. With a soft sigh, she collected her bag. "I'll think about it, but don't force me. Don't ambush me at work or at home. If I decide it's safe for you to meet Matteo, I'll contact Gabriel." Relief flickered in his eyes, tempered by guilt. "Thank you. I'll wait. As long as it takes." Marta stood, still unsure whether her decision was wise. A swirl of conflicting emotions battered her. Relief that she finally had an explanation, hurt that it still felt inadequate, fear about the unknown. But for now, she was finished. "Goodbye, Vicente." He stood too, offering a small nod. "Goodbye, Marta." Without another word, she turned and walked out of the cafe, stepping into the light rain. She didn't look back, but she sensed Vicente watching her leave, perhaps trying to will her to stay. Her heart pounded, tears threatening. Yet she pressed forward. She had a son to protect, a life to maintain, and no guarantee that any of Vicente's promises would hold. Still, as she caught a bus toward Pilar's apartment, she felt a strange glimmer of something. Not hope, exactly, but the faint possibility of a future where Matteo might know the father who had once abandoned them. Whether or not that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. She hugged her arms, staring at the raindrops sliding across the bus window. The day's revelations weighed heavily on her, but she clung to one certainty. If Vicente wanted a place in Matteo's world, he had a lot to prove, and Marta would not surrender her trust lightly. The afternoon clouds lingered in the sky, casting the city in a muted palette of gray. Marta sat on the bus, shoulders tense, eyes on the passing buildings but mind far away. The meeting still played out in her head, every word Vicente said echoing through her thoughts. He'd seemed so earnest, so genuinely remorseful. Yet her years of struggling alone weighed heavily against any sudden trust. When she finally reached Pilar's building, she climbed the creaking steps to the third floor. Every footfall feeling heavier than usual, she could already hear the sounds of her sister's TV through the thin walls. Inside, she found Pilar bustling around the small kitchen, trying to coax Matteo into finishing a glass of milk. The moment her son saw Marta, he let out an enthusiastic squeal and ran to hug her legs. "Mommy, you're back!" he exclaimed, clinging tight. "Auntie Pilar said you'd be a little late, but you promised you'd help me with my dinosaur puzzle." Marta ruffled his hair gently, pushing aside her inner turmoil for his sake. "That's right, baby. Go get it set up and I'll be there in a minute, okay?" Grinning, Matteo dashed off to the living room, where a half-finished puzzle of cartoon T-Rexes lay scattered on the coffee table. Once he was out of earshot, Pilar turned to Marta, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "So," she said quietly, scanning her sister's face, "you didn't come straight home. Did something happen?" Marta let out a long breath, nodding. "I met him, Pilar. We talked." Pilar's eyes flared with alarm. "Vicente, already?" "Yeah," Marta confirmed, removing her damp jacket. "He sent someone to invite me, and I figured I needed answers. He told me about his father's demands, about being pressured to sign documents giving up paternity. He says he regrets it all." She leaned against the kitchen counter, voice trembling. "Says he wants to be in Matteo's life." Pilar's expression wavered between anger and cautious sympathy. "What do you think? Do you believe him?" Marta shrugged, hugging her arms. "I don't know. Maybe part of me does. He seemed sincere, but how can I trust that he won't disappear again when things get complicated? And what if letting him in just confuses Matteo?" Pilar sighed. "You have every right to protect yourself, and especially your son." Then her gaze sharpened. "And the strange phone call? Did he mention that?" "He said it wasn't him." Marta frowned. "Claimed he'd never call you like that. He seemed genuinely puzzled. Thought it might be some rival or competitor in his business. Something about a merger he's finalizing." "Rival? Merger?" Pilar shook her head, clearly not liking the sound of it. I'd hate for you and Matteo to get dragged into some corporate mess." "Me too," Marta said. She gripped the edge of the countertop, knuckles white. "Vicente claims he'll keep us safe, but that's easy to say." They stood in uneasy silence, both aware that Matteo was waiting with the puzzle a few steps away. Soon enough, Marta forced a smile and excused herself to join her son. For the next half hour, she tried to be present, helping him find matching pieces, praising his excitement. Yet her thoughts wandered, replaying Vicente's vow not to walk away again. When the puzzle was done, Marta guided Matteo through his evening routine. Dinner, a bit of reading, brushing teeth. Pilar soon left for her late shift at the diner. By the time darkness fell, Matteo was tucked into the couch bed, dozing off to the lull of an old cartoon's closing credits. Marta quietly turned off the TV and gathered the leftover puzzle pieces. The hush of the apartment pressed in, leaving her alone with her worries. Her phone vibrated, giving her a jolt. Heart pounding, she scrambled to see who was calling. The screen showed an unknown number. Anxiety flared. Was it that mysterious caller again? She nearly declined, but some instinct compelled her to answer. "Hello?" she whispered, not wanting to wake Matteo. "Good evening? Am I speaking to Senora Marta?" said a calm male voice she didn't recognize. Her pulse raced. "Who is this?" "My name is Carranza. I represent certain interests in the business world. I'd like to discuss a matter concerning Vicente Salazar." Marta's throat went dry. "I have nothing to do with Salazar Industries. You should contact them directly." "But I believe you do, in a more personal way," the voice continued, devoid of warmth. "We have reason to believe your relationship with Senor Vicente could affect his decisions. He's finalizing a merger, correct? We'd hate for personal entanglements to complicate what should be a straightforward agreement." Her anger flared. "Who are you to interfere in my life? I'm not part of any merger." The caller ignored her question, pressing on with unsettling calm. "Let's just say it would be best if you kept your distance from Senor Vicente's affairs. If you push him to make emotionally driven choices, there could be consequences." A pause. "You have a son, I believe." "Matteo?" Marta's heart lurched, blood turning cold. "Stay away from him," she hissed. "Then do your part," the voice replied. "Don't encourage Vicente to stall or reconsider anything. We're sure you'll do what's right. Good night." The line clicked, leaving her trembling. Slowly she lowered the phone, mind reeling. The threat was veiled, but plain enough. Someone wanted to ensure Vicente stayed on track with his business plans, unimpeded by personal drama. Had Vicente told them about her and Matteo, or had they dug up the information themselves? She sank onto the couch's edge, tears threatening. Looking at Matteo's sleeping form, she felt a surge of protective fury. No one would threaten her child. She swallowed hard, recalling Vicente's vow that he'd keep them safe. But could he? Especially if he was entangled with dangerous corporate rivals. Her immediate reaction was to cut off all contact with Vicente, to vanish back into obscurity. Yet a stubborn part of her refused to be chased away like that. And ironically, pulling away from Vicente might cause him even more stress, harming his business decisions, exactly what these unseen figures seemed to fear or manipulate. She spent a fitful night huddled on the floor near Matteo, checking each shadow or noise outside the window. By morning, she felt more like a guardian on high alert than a mother heading to work. Her eyes stung from sleeplessness, but she forced herself to prepare for another shift. As she dressed, she mulled over her options. She couldn't ignore the call. Someone clearly had her number and knowledge about her family. Should she warn Vicente? That might escalate matters, but perhaps he needed to know. She'd intended to keep him at arm's length, but if powerful forces in his orbit were targeting her, he had a responsibility to address it. He's the one with resources, she thought bitterly. Let him fix the trouble he's dragged me into. After dropping Matteo at school, she headed to the Grand Mayfair. The usually comforting routine now felt overshadowed by dread. At her locker, she donned her uniform mechanically, exchanging brief greetings with Clara and the others. She was too preoccupied to hide the strain in her features. Clara, who'd noticed Marta's pallor, cornered her. "Listen, you seem off. Are you sick? You look like you've seen a ghost." Marta forced a laugh that came out shaky. "I'm just not sleeping well. Everything's fine, really." But from Clara's concerned expression, Marta knew her friend didn't fully believe her. Even so, there was no time to elaborate. The head housekeeper had posted the day's assignments. Marta was back on the VIP floor, specifically Suite 203. She sighed, half expecting that. No more avoiding it. When she finally worked up the nerve to knock on the suite's door, her heart pounded. "Housekeeping," she called. No answer. Again. She swiped her key card and slipped inside. The suite was tidy, bed made, though there were signs someone had left in a hurry. An open suitcase half filled, a few scattered shirts on a chair. On the desk, she spotted a note with a few scribbled lines. "Meeting investors at noon. Must finalize contract by Friday. Personal matter unresolved. Still waiting on Marta's decision." Her throat constricted. So Vicente was journaling or leaving reminders for himself, referencing her name and the looming business contract. She felt an odd twist of sympathy. Perhaps he was caught between family obligations and the threat of these rivals, pressured on all sides. But that did not excuse the danger to her and Mateo. As she carefully folded the clothes and laid them in the suitcase, her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. She jumped, dread filling her, but the caller ID read Gabriel Ortiz. She hesitated, then answered. "Yes? Marta, this is Gabriel. Forgive the intrusion, but I was asked by Senor Vicente to check on you. He received an anonymous message this morning hinting at threats made against you." Gabriel's tone was controlled, but she could sense his unease. "Has anything happened?" Her fingers tightened on the phone. She glanced around the empty suite, acutely aware she was speaking in Vicente's own space. "Yes, actually," she muttered, voice low. "Some man called last night. He threatened me, told me to stay out of Vicente's business affairs. He mentioned my son." Gabriel inhaled sharply. "That's serious. Senor Vicente is extremely concerned. He asked if you'd be willing to meet, somewhere secure. He believes discussing this openly is the first step in protecting you and your child." Her stomach churned. The last thing she wanted was more entanglement, but the call had terrified her. Avoiding Vicente wouldn't make these threats vanish. "When?" she asked, throat tight. "Whenever you're free. We can arrange private security to escort you. A public place, or even inside the hotel's VIP lounge if you prefer." Marta hesitated. She detested the thought of men in suits following her around, but she couldn't ignore the sense of looming danger. Maybe she needed Vicente's help, for Mateo's sake. "All right," she relented. "I finish at 5. After that I can come to the lounge, but I won't stay long." "Understood," Gabriel said. "We'll ensure it's a quick private meeting. Thank you, Marta." When she hung up, Marta let out a shaky breath and sank onto the edge of the bed. Everything felt surreal, like stepping into someone else's life, a swirl of corporate power struggles and intimidation. All she'd ever wanted was a stable job to support her son. Now she was at the center of a crisis because of Vicente's reappearance. Gaze darting around the suite, she glimpsed the half-zipped suitcase. Her thoughts flashed to Mateo's peaceful face at bedtime, how trustingly he snuggled against her. She'd do anything to keep him safe. If meeting Vicente could shed light on these threats and find a solution, she'd endure it. She closed her eyes, silently praying for guidance. Steadying herself, she finished tidying the suite, every motion feeling heavier with apprehension. Then she pushed her housekeeping cart into the corridor, her mind set on the hours ahead. At 5 o'clock, she would face Vicente again, this time not for an apology, but out of necessity. Because lurking behind his polished exterior and business empire were dangers she never imagined. And if she was to protect her child, she needed to know exactly what she was up against. The hours until 5 o'clock passed at a crawl. Every task Marta performed, changing linens, vacuuming corridors, delivering fresh towels, felt oddly mechanical, as though her body were running on autopilot. Inside, her nerves coiled tighter with each passing minute, the threat of unknown enemies looming in her thoughts. She tried to focus on mundane details, folding corners of bed sheets with precision, ensuring the minibar was fully stocked. But her attention kept drifting to the meeting awaiting her after her shift. When at last the clock struck 5, she returned her housekeeping cart to the staff area, clocked out, and slipped into the employee locker room. Outside, the day was slowly fading, streaks of late afternoon sunlight cutting through the windows. She exchanged her uniform for a simple blouse and jeans. In the small mirror, she noticed dark circles under her eyes, visible proof of restless nights. With a final deep breath, she steadied herself. From the locker room, she made her way toward the VIP lounge on the 10th floor. Passing through the lobby, she glimpsed the usual bustle of guests checking in and out, bellhops guiding luggage carts, and the gentle piano music playing overhead. All these people have no idea I'm heading into some corporate underworld drama, she thought bleakly. Upon reaching the private elevator bank reserved for VIP guests and staff with clearance, she showed her ID badge to the security guard. He nodded, pressing a button that opened the gleaming elevator doors. Her reflection in the polished interior made her uneasy. She brushed away a stray strand of hair, wishing she felt more confident. The VIP lounge greeted her with understated elegance, plush seating, a wall of windows revealing a panoramic city view, and a hushed atmosphere that seemed a world away from the public areas of the hotel. A few well-dressed individuals occupied distant corners, quietly conversing or working on laptops. Thick carpets muffled every footstep as Marta advanced, scanning for Vicente. Gabriel Ortiz stood up from a sofa near the glass wall. He wore a charcoal suit, crisp as ever, and offered a slight bow when he saw her approach. "Marta, thank you for coming," he said softly. "Senor Salazar is in a private conference room just through there." He gestured to a set of opaque glass doors at the lounge's far end. Her pulse hammered. She had half hoped Vicente might simply be waiting in the open lounge area, but clearly he'd arranged for a more secluded space. She straightened her posture, willing her anxiety to subside, and followed Gabriel across the plush carpet. He opened one of the glass doors to reveal a sleek, modern conference room with a long table. Large windows offered the same breathtaking cityscape, tinted by the warm glow of the late sun. Vicente stood near the window, gaze distant, his phone in one hand. At the sound of the door, he turned. "Marta," he said with relief. He set his phone aside and stepped forward, gesturing to a chair at the table's midpoint. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. Please, sit." She did so, eyeing him warily. Gabriel entered behind her, quietly shutting the door. Vicente's expression held genuine concern. She could almost sense the tension radiating from him, the swirl of business obligations and personal regrets. She broke the silence first. "I'm here because of that threatening call. They mention my son by name. I need to understand what's going on. Who might be pressuring you, or me?" Vicente nodded. "I'm aware, and I'm sorry you've been dragged into this. My business negotiations are more complicated than I realized. There are investors who want this merger sealed at any cost, and there are rival interests who may want to sabotage it. Some see me as a weak spot because of my personal affairs." His jaw tightened. "I suspect the people who contacted you want to ensure I don't back out of the deal. They believe, rightly or wrongly, that a reunion with you and Mateo could distract me or change my priorities." Marta's lips pressed into a thin line. "So they're threatening me to keep you in line? That's sick." Gabriel stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. "We've been gathering intel. We believe a competitor named Corvalon Holdings has been looking to undermine Salazar Industries. They might have learned about your past connection to Senor Salazar and decided to apply pressure. He slid a sheet of paper across to her, showing a blurred photo of a man in a dark suit. We suspect he's an operative linked to Corvalán, possibly the same man who called you. Marta glanced at the image, a chill creeping up her spine. She couldn't recognize the man's face from a mere phone call, but the very fact that she was staring at a corporate dossier felt surreal. "So what now?" she murmured. "Are you expecting me to hide? Or to vanish so they don't use me as leverage?" Vicente exhaled, worry etched on his features. "I don't want you to vanish. I don't want to lose track of you or Mateo again. But your safety is crucial. If these people think threatening you will force me to finalize the merger swiftly or at certain terms, they won't stop until they get what they want." "Can't you just report this to the police?" Marta asked, frustration lacing her tone. Gabriel and Vicente exchanged a glance. Then Gabriel sighed, carefully choosing his words. "We have limited evidence. Corporate espionage is subtle. Shadowy phone calls, intimidation behind the scenes. Even if we told the authorities, it might just lead to a half-hearted investigation. In the meantime, you and your son remain vulnerable." "That's absurd," Marta said, voice trembling with anger. "These people can harass me, mention my son, and there's nothing we can do?" Vicente stepped closer to the table, meeting her eyes. "We can protect you. I have resources to arrange private security for you and Mateo." She stiffened. "Security guards following us around? That's not the life I want for my child." "I understand," Vicente said gently. "But at least until the merger is settled and the threat subsides, it might be necessary, unless we can find a way to expose them or neutralize their leverage." Marta felt like the room was tilting. Only days ago, her biggest worry was juggling work schedules and parenting duties. Now she was listening to talk of private security and espionage. She folded her arms across her chest, fighting a wave of panic. "This is insane. I never asked for any of this. I never asked you to come back." Vicente's expression flickered with guilt. "I know you didn't. But now that it's happening, I can't just let them harm you. Let me help, please. Whether or not you forgive me, I won't stand by while these people threaten my family." His voice cracked on the last word. Family. The very sound of it in his mouth caught Marta off guard. In that moment, she saw again the regret in his eyes, the sincerity of wanting to protect the son he'd never met. And despite her fury, she couldn't deny a small corner of her heart softened, wishing things could have been different from the start. "All right," she murmured, blinking away the sting of tears. "If you think you can keep them away from us, I'll agree to some basic security. But discreet, you understand? I don't want armed men scaring my boy, and this can't drag on forever." Vicente's shoulders relaxed, relief evident. "Of course. I'll make sure any protection detail is unobtrusive. Gabriel can handle the arrangements. We'll do everything possible to keep this short term." Gabriel cleared his throat, nodding in affirmation. "We can set that up immediately. A couple of plainclothes professionals just to keep an eye on Mateo's school, your sister's apartment, and your route to work." Marta swallowed, hating how her life was suddenly on display for strangers. But if it meant ensuring Mateo's safety— "Fine," she said. Then a surge of indignation flared. "But understand this changes nothing about whether I let you see Mateo. That's still my decision, and if I decide you're too dangerous or unpredictable, I'll walk away. For good." Vicente bowed his head respectfully. "I accept that. I know I have to earn your trust. I only ask for the chance." Before she could respond, the conference room door cracked open. A server in a neat uniform peeked in hesitantly. "Pardon me, sirs, ma'am," he whispered. "We have some refreshments if you'd like. Coffee or tea?" Gabriel motioned politely for the server to leave them. "Thank you, but perhaps later." The door closed again, leaving them alone once more. Marta rubbed her temples, the tension pounding behind her eyes. "So, what do I do now? Just go about my life while your security people watch from the shadows?" "That's essentially it," Gabriel said. "We'll follow up on any leads that can identify who called you. If needed, we'll confront them legally or otherwise. Meanwhile, we need you to stay cautious. Avoid giving out personal details. Keep your phone on you at all times." She let out a brittle laugh. "I never share personal details with anyone, trust me." Vicente offered a small, humorless smile. "I guess we should be thankful for that." He hesitated, eyes flicking to the floor. "Marta, I know you're overwhelmed. I am too. But let's do this as calmly as possible. Once the threats are neutralized, we can figure out where we stand." She nodded, though every muscle in her body felt knotted with apprehension. "All right," she repeated, "but I'm leaving now. I have to pick Mateo up, get home, try to keep life normal. I'll, keep in touch about the security detail?" Gabriel immediately handed her a small card. "Here's the number of the lead agent, a man named Elias. He'll coordinate discreetly. You can text him with your routine, and he'll position himself accordingly." Marta took the card. She hated the feeling of capitulation but saw no alternative. The memory of that phone call still chilled her. She gathered her bag, standing to leave. Vicente stood as well, looking as though he wanted to say more, perhaps something comforting. But she raised a hand, stopping him. "Don't. I'll contact you if I need you." He inclined his head, regret etched in his gaze. "Okay, be safe." Without another word, she stepped out into the lounge, her heart in her throat. The sun was setting outside, painting the skyline in somber hues of orange and pink. She hurried to the elevator, ignoring the curious glances of a few lounge guests. The ride down to the lobby felt interminable, tension thrumming in her veins. "What have I done?" she asked herself. She'd just agreed to allow strangers to keep watch over her life, all because of this twisted business rivalry connected to Vicente. But if that was the price to ensure Mateo's well-being, she had no real choice. Stepping outside the hotel, she braced herself for the chill evening air. Shadows lengthened across the street. She glanced around, half expecting to see some lurking figure. Instead, traffic rushed by and the city's neon signs flickered to life. It felt bizarre that the world carried on while she navigated a crisis. At the bus stop, she clutched her phone and the security agent's card. This must be so normal for people like Vicente. Bodyguards, threats, negotiations. But for me, it's a nightmare. She closed her eyes, drawing a fortifying breath, picturing Mateo's bright smile. Soon she'd be home, hugging him, pretending all was well. The bus rattled up. Marta boarded, found a seat near the window. As it pulled away from the curb, she stared at the bright facade of the Grand Mayfair receding into the distance. She'd always seen her job there as a safe, stable income, far removed from the drama of the wealthy guests. Now she was tangled in the affairs of one, uncertain if she could keep her child's life from unraveling. Night fell as the bus rumbled through traffic. Marta held her phone, waiting to see if the so-called Agent Elias would message instructions. Nothing came yet, which was fine. She'd give him her schedule soon enough. For now, she prayed the illusions of normalcy could hold. But deep down, a knot of dread told her that as long as Vicente's rivals believed she could influence him, the danger hadn't even begun to peak. The bus ride home felt like it stretched for hours, even though it was a route Marta had traveled countless times. She gripped the seat in front of her, eyes darting at every stop, half expecting someone suspicious to board. Each time a passenger slid onto the bus, she tensed. But none of them looked her way. They seemed preoccupied with their own troubles, phone screens glowing or grocery bags rustling. At last, her stop arrived. She stepped off onto the dimly lit sidewalk and shivered in the cool evening air. The drizzle from earlier had ceased, leaving behind a damp chill that clung to the concrete and the flickering street lamps. She walked briskly, glancing over her shoulder as she passed a row of closed shops. "I'm getting paranoid," she told herself. But after that phone call, who wouldn't be? When she reached Pilar's apartment building, the worn elevator was out of service again, so she climbed the 3 flights of stairs. The hallway was quiet, except for the distant sound of a neighbor's television and the faint aroma of cooking drifting through a half-open door. Fumbling with her keys, she unlocked the door to 3B. Inside, the warmth of home enveloped her, soft lamplight, the comforting clutter of everyday life. Mateo's jacket hung on the back of a chair. Children's drawings were taped to the fridge. Pilar's mismatched slippers were kicked off near the sofa. For a moment, Marta closed her eyes, allowing this small sense of normalcy to soothe her pounding heart. "Mommy!" Mateo's voice rang out. He bounded from the bedroom with an excited grin. "You're here!" Marta knelt to catch him in a hug, inhaling the familiar scent of soap and crayons. "Hey, sweet boy," she whispered, kissing his hair. "Where's your aunt?" "Kitchen," he declared, then tugged Marta's hand. "I drew a new dinosaur picture. Come see." She tousled his hair and stood, letting him lead her toward Pilar, who stood by the stove stirring a pot of pasta sauce. "You're a bit later than usual," Pilar noted, her tone neutral but her eyes brimming with concern. "Everything okay?" Marta exhaled. She had told Pilar over the phone that she was meeting Vicente again, but details had been sparse. "I'll explain later," she said quietly, glancing at Mateo, who was rummaging in a drawer for crayons. "It's complicated." Pilar gave a sympathetic nod. "Dinner's almost ready. Go wash up and we'll eat." During the meal, they kept the conversation light. Mateo babbled about his day at school, how he made a new friend who shared his love for dinosaurs. Pilar asked about Marta's day at the hotel, and Marta offered the bare minimum. She'd had another meeting regarding a work issue. By unspoken agreement, they shielded Mateo from the heavier matters swirling beneath the surface. After dinner, while Mateo sat in the living room coloring, Pilar and Marta retreated to the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. "So," Pilar said, folding her arms, "what did Vicente say this time?" Marta glanced toward the living room to ensure Mateo was out of earshot. "He's convinced rivals are trying to strong-arm me, us, to ensure he signs some merger on their terms. He's offering private security, thinks it'll keep me and Mateo safe until the threat goes away." Pilar's brows shot up. "Security? Like bodyguards?" Marta grimaced. "Yeah. He wants them to watch over the apartment, the school, my route to work. It feels like stepping into a spy movie. But apparently, there's not enough evidence for the police to act." "And you agreed to this?" Pilar asked, concern etched on her face. Marta pressed her fingers to her temples. "I don't see a better option. After that threatening call?" She trailed off, a shiver running through her. "I'd rather endure a few days of discreet bodyguards than risk these people making good on their threats." Pilar touched her sister's shoulder. "I understand. It's just surreal. Do you trust Vicente to handle this responsibly?" "Trust him. Not entirely," Marta admitted. "But he has resources, and he owes us. If using his money and connections can keep Mateo safe, maybe that's something I have to accept." Pilar nodded, biting her lip. "All right. If these security guys show up, I'll cooperate. We can figure out how to explain it to Mateo without scaring him." Relieved at her sister's support, Marta squeezed Pilar's hand. "Thank you." A light tap on the kitchen doorway made them turn. Mateo hovered there, crayons in hand, curiosity brimming in his eyes. "Why are you whispering?" Pilar smiled brightly, crossing to him. "We were just talking grown-up stuff. Hey, want me to help finish your dinosaur drawing?" Mateo nodded, easily distracted. The pair headed back to the living room. Marta lingered in the kitchen, her heart heavy with worry. How do I shield him from all this? Soon, bedtime arrived. Mateo brushed his teeth with Marta's help, then curled up on the couch bed with a storybook, drifting off by the end of the second chapter. Pilar said a quick goodnight, heading to her room. Marta set about quietly tidying the kitchen, but her nerves were too jangled to relax. She debated stepping outside to check the building's entrance to see if any security was out there. But fatigue weighed her down. Eventually, she lay on the living room floor beside the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Her phone sat nearby, occasionally lighting up with idle notifications. She half expected a text from the security agent, Elias, though she hadn't sent him her schedule yet. She wondered if they'd post someone all night, or if that would only begin once she confirmed times. Everything will be fine, she tried to tell herself, but the words rang hollow. The next morning brought a swirl of routine. Marta woke Mateo early for school, made him a quick breakfast, and ensured he had all his supplies. Pilar had an off day from the diner, so she offered to accompany Mateo to school, giving Marta time to handle the new security arrangement. After kissing her son goodbye, Marta stepped out onto the street, squinting in the early sunlight. The air had a crispness hinting at the changing seasons. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to the name Elias that Gabriel had texted her. Another name, another man in a suit, presumably. Her stomach churned. Better get this over with. Marta. Good morning. This is Marta. My schedule is mostly stable. I leave home around 7:30 to catch the bus, start work at 8, finish around 5 or 6. My son is in school until 3, then with my sister. How do we do this? She hit send, her thumb trembling. An uneasy feeling settled in her gut as she walked to the bus stop. Within minutes, her phone chimed. Elias. Understood. We have a 2-person team. One will monitor near your sister's place, the other will discreetly shadow you from a distance when you travel to from the hotel. Let us know if your schedule changes or if you notice anything suspicious. Marta's grip on her phone tightened. They're serious. She typed a curt reply, thanking him, then boarded her usual bus. The ride to the hotel was busier than normal, throngs of office workers and students. She scanned the faces, wondering if one of them could be an undercover guard assigned by Elias. She saw only strangers, oblivious to her presence. Maybe the guard is following in a car or catching the next bus. This is going to take some getting used to. At the Grand Mayfair, life proceeded as always. Opulent guests, meticulously uniformed staff, the faint smell of fresh flowers in the air. She changed into her maid's uniform, clocked in, and checked the assignment board. Once again, Suite 203 was on her list. Her heart sank. She didn't relish stepping into Vicente's suite after all that had transpired, but the routine demanded it. Before she could gather her cart, Clara sidled up to her, a worried frown on her face. Marta, is everything all right? You look on edge. If there's something wrong with management, you can talk to me. My cousin is a union rep. Marta mustered a tight smile. No, it's not about the hotel. Just some family issues. I appreciate your concern, though. Clara squeezed her arm gently. Okay, but if you need help, I'm here. She lowered her voice, eyes darting around. And watch out for that man in the gray suit near the service entrance. I saw him earlier. Doesn't look like staff or a guest. Maybe your family issue is more complicated. Marta stiffened. A man in a gray suit near the service entrance? Possibly one of Elias's guards or someone else. Thanks for letting me know, she murmured, forcing calm. She set off with her housekeeping cart, heart pounding. If it's the guard, at least that means they're doing their job, she rationalized. If it's not... Reaching the VIP floor, she found Suite 203's door closed. No Do Not Disturb sign this time. She knocked. Housekeeping? A muffled voice answered, but she couldn't make out the words. Carefully, she swiped her key and entered, bracing herself. Inside, she saw Vicente standing by the desk, phone in hand, suit jacket hanging over a chair. He looked up at her entry, surprise and an apologetic smile crossing his features. Oh, Marta. I didn't realize it was this late already. I meant to step out. She cleared her throat, struggling to maintain professionalism. I can come back later if you need privacy. He shook his head, setting his phone down. No, it's fine. Actually, I'm glad to see you. I got an update from Gabriel about the security detail. Everything going okay so far? She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. I only just messaged them. Still feels strange. She pushed the card into the suite, willing herself to focus on her tasks. Empty trash bins, wipe surfaces, check linens. Vicente watched her, regret flickering in his eyes. "I know you never wanted this. I'm sorry. But hopefully it's just temporary." "I hope so," she muttered, pulling fresh towels from the cart. "I can't live like this forever." He nodded, rummaging through some papers on the desk. "If you need anything, any financial support or even just someone to talk to, I'm here." The sincerity in his voice made her pause. Marta set down the towels, glancing at him. A dozen stinging remarks threatened to spill. "Where were you when I needed financial support all those years? Why now?" But she bit her tongue. She was already embroiled in enough turmoil. Instead, she spoke softly. "I appreciate the offer. Let's focus on stopping these threats first. After that..." She trailed off, not daring to articulate the possibility that she might let him meet Matteo if the danger passed. Vicente nodded. "Agreed." He picked up his phone again, eyes scanning some message. Then he stiffened slightly, brow furrowing in displeasure. "Looks like they're pushing me to finalize the merger contract by tomorrow. I suspect that means more pressure from their side, and possibly from the rivals too." Marta's stomach churned. "So it's escalating?" He sighed. "Yes, but I can't sign anything without ensuring certain clauses that protect our long-term strategy. Otherwise, Salazar Industries will lose control. My father built this company with an iron fist, and ironically that's part of why I was so afraid to defy him before. Now I'm the one left fighting off vultures." She said nothing, simply adjusting the pillows and tucking in the sheets. The swirl of corporate negotiations felt alien to her, but she sensed the mounting tension. If Vicente was resisting the merger's unfavorable terms, the rival factions might intensify their threats. Would I and Matteo be in greater danger if he continued to hold out? Finishing her tasks, she stepped back. "I'm done here. I hope you figure it out." Vicente nodded, crossing to the door with her. "Thank you. And Marta, truly, if you need anything, call me." She mustered a tense nod, then exited into the corridor. Once the door closed behind her, she let out a long breath, shoulders sagging. Each day, the tangled web of business threats and half-repaired personal bonds grew more complicated. "Just keep going," she told herself. "Keep Matteo safe. Keep living one day at a time." Returning to her cart, she moved on to the next suite. Yet her thoughts remained anchored in the swirl of decisions, regrets, and looming confrontation. The city outside might appear unchanged, but for Marta, everything was different now, a shift in her once quiet life that she could no longer ignore. The path forward was uncertain, but she braced herself, determined to shield her son at all costs, even if it meant walking a tightrope between her own unresolved pain and the dangerous world Vicente had brought to her doorstep. The next few days unfolded like a tense game of cat and mouse. Marta tried to maintain her normal routine, arriving at the Grand Mayfair early, tending to her housekeeping tasks meticulously, while beneath the surface, her entire world felt on high alert. True to their word, the private security team quietly trailed her movements. In the mornings, a tall, clean-cut man named Elias would sometimes be visible half a block behind Marta on her walk to the bus stop, or stationed discreetly on the opposite sidewalk when she arrived at the hotel. At other times, she caught only fleeting glimpses of an unmarked sedan with tinted windows parked down the street. Her sister, Pilar, reported seeing another agent now and then near the apartment building, scanning the comings and goings. They never interacted with Matteo, never came close enough to spook him. Still, the knowledge of their presence weighed heavily on Marta's mind. Every phone call, every shift in routine, she wondered if something ominous lurked around the corner. Meanwhile, the hotel's usual hum of luxury continued unabated. Tourists paraded through the lobby, snapping photos of the elegant chandeliers. Business travelers checked in with laptops under their arms and phones glued to their ears. Marta couldn't help but scan each new guest, wondering if they were part of Vicente's corporate world or potential threats from the opposing side. She reminded herself not to spiral into paranoia. Vicente, for his part, seemed increasingly strained. Twice Marta had entered Suite 203 only to find him on tense phone calls, voice low and clipped, or rummaging through stacks of contracts that littered the desk. He was cordial whenever he saw her, asking politely if she was all right, if she'd noticed anything suspicious. She kept her answers short. Their dynamic was a precarious balance, both conscious of the unspoken private turmoil swirling around them, and yet they rarely spoke more than a few sentences in the presence of the hotel's ever-watchful staff. On a Thursday afternoon, as Marta cleared away breakfast dishes from Suite 203, she overheard Vicente's conversation with Gabriel in the adjacent sitting area. The door was partially ajar, their voices muffled. She had no intention of eavesdropping, but certain phrases reached her ears. "My father's legacy, control shares, if I don't sign. Corvalon interference, deeper than we thought." A chill ran through Marta's spine. The name Corvalon surfaced again, the rumored competitor who might have orchestrated the threatening call. She bit her lip, forcing herself to focus on the soiled plates in her hands, then tiptoed out. The last thing she wanted was to be caught spying. But the more I learn, she thought grimly, the more dangerous it seems. That evening, she picked Matteo up from school, relieved to see him bounding out the doors with a grin, free of any knowledge that men in suits might be hovering at a distance to protect him. He chattered about a new classmate, oblivious to Marta's discreet scans of the surrounding street. She spotted Elias leaning against a lamppost half a block away, wearing a baseball cap that barely hid his professional demeanor. She offered him a small nod of acknowledgement, and he gave a subtle dip of his head in return. At home, Pilar greeted them with a worried glance. "Everything still quiet?" "For now," Marta replied, shedding her coat. "The guards are out there, but I haven't gotten any strange calls this week. Maybe these Corvalon people are backing off, or maybe they're just waiting." Pilar's frown deepened. "I hate this, Marta. It's not right that you can't even walk your son home without scanning for threats." "Believe me, I know." Marta sighed. "But at least we're safe so far. And if Vicente can finalize his deals without caving to blackmail, maybe all this will end soon." That was her fragile hope, that the corporate intrigue swirling around them would dissipate once the negotiations concluded, assuming Vicente maintained control and kept the unscrupulous rivals at bay. Yet doubt gnawed at her. Danger might linger even after the ink dried on the contracts. By Friday morning, the tension in the hotel was palpable. An unusual cluster of men in tailored suits milled about the lobby, their conversation hushed, expressions grim. They wore badges with the Salazar Industries logo, and Marta guessed they were Vicente's top executives or legal advisors converging to finalize the infamous merger. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she wheeled her cart past them. Is this the day everything changes? She worked her shift, heart pounding, half waiting for news of some confrontation, or a phone call from Elias warning her to stay home. Nothing happened. No alarms, no menacing visitors in dark coats. Eventually, near midday, she braced herself and entered Suite 203 with a set of fresh towels. The bed was empty, the desk cleared of documents. Vicente was nowhere in sight. Maybe he's already at some boardroom, signing or refusing to sign. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, making her jump. She pulled it out. A text from Elias. "Elias, private security. Senor Vicente requested you come to the 14th floor executive conference room after your shift. He says it's urgent. Please confirm you've seen this." Her chest constricted. "Urgent?" She tapped out a quick response. "Marta, understood. My shift ends at 3 p.m. today. We'll head up then." She tucked the phone away, finishing her housekeeping tasks robotically. The rest of the afternoon felt surreal, a countdown ticking in her mind. What does he need me for? Am I about to walk into some confrontation with the Corvalon group? The notion made her palms sweat. At last, 3 p.m. arrived. She turned in her cart and changed out of her uniform, smoothing her hair and trying to calm her nerves. Then, summoning her courage, she took the elevator to the 14th floor, a level typically reserved for the hotel's most elite function rooms. The corridor was hushed, lined with discreet double doors labeled with gold plaques. She found the correct room and hesitated, knuckles hovering over the door. Soft voices reached her from inside. Summoning her nerve, she knocked. Gabriel opened the door, face drawn with tension. "Marta, thank you for coming," he said quietly. "They're finishing up inside." She stepped into a spacious conference room filled with sleek chairs around a glass-topped table. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, now glowing under early afternoon sunlight. Around the table sat half a dozen men in suits, some faces she recognized from the lobby, others new. At the head, Vicente stood, collar unbuttoned as though he'd loosened his tie in frustration. Upon seeing Marta, he moved aside from the conversation. "You made it," he said, relief flickering across his features. "I'm sorry to call you here so suddenly." She glanced uneasily at the men who had now turned to regard her with curiosity. "What's going on?" Vicente sighed, voice hushed. "We're in the final moments of signing the merger contract, but I just received a message from an anonymous source, someone claiming to speak for Corvalán, threatening that if I don't sign their version of the terms, something will happen to you and Mateo." His face contorted with anger. "I wanted you here so you'd be nearby if anything escalates." A chill crept over her. "You think they'd do something right this second?" Gabriel interjected, eyes darting among the men at the table. "We've beefed up security around the building. Elias has agents stationed at every exit, but with these kinds of threats, you never know." Marta felt exposed, aware of the scrutiny from the suited executives. "I appreciate you wanting me close, but I can't help with the contract. I'm not a businesswoman." Vicente nodded grimly. "I know. This is purely about intimidation. They want me to see you, to remember what's at stake." His jaw tightened. "But they don't realize that threatening you only makes me more determined not to cave." For a split second, Marta was struck by his protective vehemence. It was a far cry from the man who had once run from responsibility. Now he was standing in defiance, risking his corporate empire to ensure she and Mateo weren't used as pawns. Despite her lingering resentment, something inside her shifted, a flicker of cautious admiration. One of the executives stood and cleared his throat. "Señor Salazar, shall we proceed with the final signing, or do you need more time?" Vicente looked to Marta, eyes questioning. She pressed her lips together. "I'm okay," she managed. "Do what you need to do." With a stiff nod, Vicente stepped back to the table. Documents were laid out, pens at the ready, a hush falling over the room like the calm before a storm. The men resumed in hushed voices, discussing final clauses, referencing paragraphs of legal jargon. Marta hovered near the door, feeling out of place. This is the center of all the trouble. Gabriel kept glancing at his phone, presumably checking for security alerts. Every so often, a bodyguard in plain clothes peeked in, giving a quick thumbs up or shake of the head to indicate all was quiet. The tension was suffocating. Finally, Vicente raised his voice, addressing the group. "The Salazar Industries Board will only sign these terms if Clause 14 is removed and Clause 22 is revised for mutual equity shares," he said. "Otherwise, no deal." A stocky man in a pinstriped suit frowned. "But that changes the profit distribution significantly. Our side is free to walk away," Vicente interrupted, steel in his tone. "I won't sign a contract that effectively surrenders my father's company to outsiders." The stocky man scowled, flipping through pages. The other executives shifted uncomfortably. Marta tried not to let the corporate jargon overwhelm her, but she sensed a pivotal moment unfolding. After several tense minutes, the man grunted, scribbled a note, and nodded to one of his colleagues. "Fine, we'll remove Clause 14. Clause 22 will be adjusted to a 60-40 arrangement." Vicente's shoulders relaxed slightly. He leaned over, scanning the revised text. One by one, the men scribbled signatures on the dotted lines. Then it was Vicente's turn. He paused, exchanging a pointed glance with Gabriel, one last moment of consideration. Gabriel gave a subtle nod. With deliberate care, Vicente bent and signed his name in bold strokes, effectively concluding the merger on his terms. Marta watched, exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Is that it? Is it over? The men shook hands, some wearing resigned expressions, others relieved. Documents were gathered. The stocky man mumbled a curt farewell, and the group filtered out, leaving Vicente, Gabriel, and Marta behind in the conference room. The door closed, and silence enveloped them. All done, Vicente murmured, setting down his pen. He glanced at Marta, a small, weary smile on his lips. We got the terms I needed. Hopefully this means Corvalan's leverage is gone. Gabriel, however, looked far from relaxed. It might not be that simple. If Corvalan or his allies feel they lost this round, they could still lash out. We should remain vigilant. Vicente nodded solemnly, turning to Marta. Just a bit longer with the security detail, until we're certain the threat is gone. She swallowed, warring emotions swirling. All right, she whispered, but I'm praying we can get back to normal soon. For Mateo's sake. This can't be our life. A flicker of gratitude filled Vicente's eyes. I promise as soon as it's safe, I'll stand down the guards. He hesitated, then added quietly, Marta, thank you for trusting me enough to let me protect you. Even a little. She dropped her gaze. I wouldn't call it trust, she said, though her tone was gentler than before. Let's just say I have no other choice. He inclined his head, accepting her words without argument. The tension in the air, though still present, felt slightly less suffocating. Perhaps they were finally on the path toward resolving this nightmare. A knock on the doorframe interrupted them. One of the bodyguards stepped in, glancing at Vicente. Sir, might want to see this. We've intercepted some chatter on a phone line belonging to Corvalan's close associate. They're unhappy with how things turned out. Indications they might make a move tonight. Vicente grimaced, turning to Gabriel, who silently nodded and began typing furiously on his phone. Marta's chest clenched. So it's not over. Her gaze darted from the bodyguard to Vicente. Should I call Pilar and tell her to keep Mateo inside? Vicente touched her shoulder lightly, steady reassurance in his voice. Yes, and maybe stay at the hotel tonight if you can. We can give you a suite for safety or arrange for a secure ride. I don't want either of you walking into an ambush. Marta's heart hammered. Sleeping here in the hotel, like a fugitive? But the fear in her gut was real. If Corvalan's people were truly out for revenge, better to be somewhere with constant security. She managed a nod. I'll do what's necessary. And so, in that moment, she realized the respite she'd hoped for wouldn't come easily. Even with the contract signed, the undercurrents of greed and vengeance still swirled. For Mateo's sake, she would endure more nights of vigilance, more rearranged schedules. She only prayed that when the storm finally passed, there'd be a chance to reclaim the quiet life she once knew. Whether Vicente would remain in that life or drift away again, still hung in the balance. The metallic hum of the hotel's elevator doors sliding open echoed in the silent corridor. Marta stepped out first, clutching her small overnight bag with white-knuckled tension. She still couldn't believe she had agreed to spend the night at the Grand Mayfair, under the watchful guard of private security, no less. But after the warning about Corvalan's possible move that evening, it seemed the safest choice. Gabriel walked beside her, his expression as calmly professional as ever. Senor Vicente insisted you take Suite 210 for the night, he said, stopping at a door near the end of the hall. We've stationed guards on this floor and at all stairwells. Your sister and Mateo are on their way, correct? Marta nodded. After making frantic phone calls, she'd persuaded Pilar to pack an overnight bag for both herself and Mateo, then come to the hotel in a secure car arranged by Vicente's team. Part of Marta felt guilty, uprooting her family at a moment's notice, but a larger part was relieved to keep them safe under one roof. Even now, she was counting the minutes until they arrived. Gabriel slid the keycard into the lock, opened the door, and handed it to Marta. The room beyond was dimly lit but luxurious. Plush carpeting, a king-size bed draped in fine linens, a lounge area with a view of the city lights. If she had come here under normal circumstances, she might have admired the elegance. Tonight she felt only the oppressive weight of danger. "Thank you," she murmured. "I'll wait here for my son and sister." Gabriel gave a polite nod. "We'll escort them directly up once they arrive. Meanwhile, try to rest. If there's any issue, use the in-room phone or text me. I'll be on this floor until morning." With that, he gently closed the door. Marta set down her bag and drew a shaky breath. Her reflection in the mirror across the room stared back, eyes shadowed by exhaustion, shoulders rigid with stress. "This can't be real," she thought with a pang. "I'm just a hotel maid. Since when do I need bodyguards and a VIP suite?" Pulling out her phone, she scrolled her messages. Pilar had texted, "Leaving now." Mateo's excited. He thinks it's a hotel sleepover. He doesn't suspect any danger. Marta's eyes stung with unshed tears of relief. At least he's not scared. She typed a quick reply. "Thank you for doing this, sis. I'll be waiting." Then she turned around, scanning the suite. To distract herself, she flicked on a lamp near the sofa and peered out the window. The city glittered below, cars crawling along lit avenues, neon signs reflecting off wet pavement. The same city she'd traversed all her life, now rendered strange by the swirl of threats and secrets enveloping her world. Her gaze caught on a black sedan parked across the street, headlights off. She tensed, wondering if it was one of Elias's men or someone with darker intentions. Then her phone vibrated again. Another text, this time from an unknown number. Unknown. "Hello, Marta. We see you're making yourself comfortable at the Grand Mayfair. You won't be safe there for long." Her heart nearly stopped. Fingers trembling, she typed furiously, "Who is this?" The reply came within seconds. "Unknown. You'll find out soon enough." She dropped her phone, hands cold with fear. They know I'm here. Are they watching right now? Her mind reeled. I have to tell Gabriel. Before she could scramble for the door, the phone vibrated again. Another text flashed. Unknown. Vicente won't sign away what we want, so now you pay. Cold dread seized her. But Vicente did sign the contract, though on his own terms. Maybe it wasn't enough for them. Or they want more. Either way, this was a direct threat. No more vague warnings. Gathering her courage, she grabbed the phone and dialed Gabriel's number. The line rang once, twice. Then he answered, voice taut. Marta? Something happen? She swallowed. Someone just texted me saying I'm not safe here, that they're coming. I think it's them. Gabriel cursed under his breath. Lock the door and stay put. I'm on my way. He hung up, leaving her alone with the thunderous beating of her heart. Within moments, she heard rushed footsteps in the hallway. A gentle rap sounded on the door. Marta, it's Gabriel. She quickly peered through the peephole. Confirming it was indeed him, she unlocked the door. He slipped inside, 2 other guards trailing him. Both wore discreet suits, earpieces visible. Show me the messages, Gabriel said urgently. She handed him the phone, and he skimmed the texts, face darkening. Elias is already sweeping the area. We'll increase guard presence on the ground floor. Pilar and Mateo should arrive soon. He paused, glancing at Marta with concern. This might be a bluff, but we can't risk it. Marta pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Do you think they could actually breach the hotel? It's unlikely, Gabriel said cautiously. Security is tight, but we must remain vigilant. Let me step into the corridor. Keep this door bolted. If anyone else tries to enter, call me first." She nodded, voice failing her. Gabriel and his men exited, leaving her alone again, though the comfort of their presence lingered just outside. She flipped the deadbolt, the chain, every lock the door offered. Minute by agonizing minute, she paced. Her phone remained silent, no new messages. She debated calling Vicente. Maybe he should know that Corvalan's people were escalating. But Gabriel had likely informed him already. Another wave of anxiety crashed over her. Pilar and Mateo are en route. Are they safe? As if in answer, her phone buzzed again, but this time it was Pilar. "We're in the lobby. 2 men from security just met us. Headed up soon." Relief flooded Marta. She sank onto the sofa, shoulders trembling. At least her family would soon be at her side. Then they could wait out the night, locked away in the suite. It felt like living in a fortress, but better that than the streets where faceless enemies lurked. Moments later, a flurry of knocks, and Gabriel's voice calling, "Marta, it's us!" She hurried to unlatch the door. Pilar entered first, carrying a small bag, Mateo peeking around her leg. He brightened at the sight of Marta. "Mommy, Aunt Pilar said we get to have a sleepover here, is that true?" Marta forced a smile, kneeling to hug him. "Yes, sweetheart, just for tonight." He beamed, oblivious to the tension. Pilar's face mirrored Marta's unease. "Any news?" she whispered. "Threatening texts," Marta whispered back, motioning for Gabriel to step in and close the door. "We're supposed to stay put. They're worried about an attack." Mateo slipped out of her arms, exploring the lavish suite with a child's wonder. "Wow, this place is huge." Pilar crouched beside Marta. "Thank goodness we made it inside. There were guards in the lobby, but everything seemed normal." Marta nodded, then turned to Gabriel. "Now what? We just lock ourselves in all night?" He nodded grimly. "That's the plan for now. We have additional personnel stationed on this floor and the emergency stairs. Try to carry on as usual. Order room service if needed. Watch TV. In the meantime, Elias and I are coordinating with Vicente. We'll track the source of those messages." Marta shuddered. "And if these people try something?" Gabriel's voice remained calm. "They'll fail. The Grand Mayfair has excellent security infrastructure, plus our own team. You're safe here." She mustered a nod, hoping he was right. With the door locked behind him, Pilar and Marta settled on the sofa, trying to project calm for Mateo, who was excitedly flicking through TV channels. As the evening progressed, they ordered a simple dinner from room service, soup and sandwiches, and tried to pass the time chatting with Mateo about school, favorite games, anything but the reality looming outside. Night blanketed the city. The suite's lamps cast soft pools of light, creating an odd sense of cozy confinement. Pilar offered to read Mateo a bedtime story. He nestled into the plush couch, yawning, and soon drifted off. Marta gently covered him with a blanket, her heart twisting at the sight of her child asleep in an unfamiliar environment because of looming threats. A knock at the door jolted her. She exchanged a nervous glance with Pilar, then moved cautiously to the peephole. It was Gabriel again, alone. She unlocked the door, letting him in. He carried a serious expression. "We've just received word. An unidentified vehicle was spotted circling the hotel repeatedly. Elias is handling it, but I wanted you to know we're on alert." Marta's stomach twisted. "Do you think they're planning to storm in?" "Unclear," Gabriel said. "Probably just trying to rattle us." He hesitated, eyeing Mateo's sleeping form. "Vicente wanted me to ask if you want him to come by just to reassure you in person, but I said I'd respect your wishes." Marta exhaled. Did she want Vicente here in the same room? The past and present collided in her mind. Hurt, regret, fear. Yet she also recognized a strange sense of relief whenever he took charge of protecting them. I don't know," she admitted. "It might confuse Mateo if he sees someone new here, especially at night." Gabriel nodded, understanding. "I'll let him know. He'll remain on the same floor if you change your mind." After a last round of reassurance, Gabriel left. Pilar paced near the window, rubbing her arms for warmth. "This is surreal," she murmured. "I never imagined we'd be in a situation like this." Marta wrapped an arm around her sister's shoulders. "Neither did I, but we'll get through it." They sat in silence, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the faint city noise beyond the thick windows. Each minute stretched into an eternity. Marta found her mind drifting to Vicente. No longer just the man who'd abandoned her, but someone struggling to shield them all from danger. She wondered if this crisis would forever define their relationship, or if someday, once the threat passed, they could speak plainly about Mateo's future. Suddenly, a burst of static crackled from the hallway, followed by muffled voices raised in alarm. Marta and Pilar leaped to their feet. Mateo stirred, blinking sleepy eyes. "Mommy?" he mumbled. "Shh, it's okay," Marta said, rushing to place a reassuring hand on her son. Pilar hurried to the door, pressing her ear against it. A frantic pounding on the door followed, and Gabriel's voice. "Marta, we have to move you! Now!" Heart lurching, she motioned Pilar to open it. Gabriel rushed in with 2 other guards, guns drawn. "We've got an attempted breach in the service elevator," he said urgently. "Come on, we're evacuating you to the secured basement level." Mateo began to cry, startled by the sight of armed men. Marta scooped him up, trying to calm him. "It's all right, sweetie. We just have to go with these men, okay?" Eyes wide, he nodded, face buried in her shoulder. Pilar grabbed the overnight bags. Together they followed Gabriel out into the corridor, where chaos reigned. Hotel security staff speaking into walkie-talkies, guests peering anxiously from doorways. Alarms hadn't been sounded, likely to avoid mass panic. They hurried to the elevator bank, which was guarded by more men in suits. One elevator stood open, and Vicente was there, disheveled, tie askew, eyes blazing with concern. "Marta, Pilar, this way." Marta stepped in, still cradling Mateo. Vicente pressed the basement button, the doors sliding shut. The descent felt agonizingly slow, tension thick as they listened to static-laden updates from the guards' earpieces. Something about suspicious men subdued near the service elevator. Shots fired? Marta's head spun. At the basement level, the doors opened onto a stark concrete corridor lit by harsh fluorescent lights. A locked security gate at the end led to what looked like a reinforced safe room. Vicente guided them inside, breath ragged. "We'll stay here until the threat is fully neutralized." The safe room had metal walls, a console of monitors showing security camera feeds, and a few chairs. Mateo clung to Marta's neck, tears leaking down his cheeks in silent confusion. She rubbed his back, fighting her own panic. Pilar hovered close, pale-faced. One guard moved to the console, scanning camera angles. "We've got them," he said with grim satisfaction. 2 armed men pinned down by security near the service elevator. Looks like they planned to come up unnoticed. Vicente stood behind him, fists clenched. "Are they Corvalan's men?" "Likely," Gabriel said, joining them. "But they won't be leaving here without a police escort." He turned, meeting Marta's gaze. "I believe this is the end of it. They've exposed themselves." Shaking with relief and adrenaline, Marta sank into a chair, Mateo still in her arms. Pilar patted her shoulder, too stunned to speak. After a few frantic minutes, the guard at the console announced, "Hotel security and police have the suspects in custody. Situation contained." Vicente released a long, trembling breath. He crouched beside Marta, laying a hand lightly on her shoulder. "It's over," he said, voice hushed, eyes glistening with a mixture of fury and relief. "They won't threaten you again." Marta looked at him, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time she felt not just anger or resentment, but genuine gratitude for his unwavering determination. He had fought, truly fought, to protect her and Mateo. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. He nodded, carefully brushing a tear from her cheek. "I'm sorry," he said, echoing words he'd spoken before. But this time, she sensed the weight behind them. Apology not just for leaving years ago, but for all the pain she'd endured since he re-entered her life. In that tense, dimly lit safe room, surrounded by guards and her trembling son, Marta realized something profound. The man who had once abandoned her was now the one who had stood between her family and real danger. Perhaps they could never regain those lost years, but maybe, just maybe, they could find a path forward, free from the shadows of the past. Hours later, when the police and security forces cleared the scene, Marta, Pilar, and Mateo emerged back into the Grand Mayfair's main lobby. Dawn's first light glowed through the glass doors, the hotel staff speaking in hushed tones about the midnight drama that had transpired. The criminals were arrested, Corvalan's threat dismantled for good. Vicente stood with Marta near the entrance, where she clutched Mateo's hand. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but a flicker of cautious hope stirred in her chest. He offered a gentle smile, looking equally drained. "You should go home, get some real rest," he said. She nodded. "Thank you for everything." Then, for the first time in many years, she found herself asking, "Will you call me? Maybe tomorrow? Mateo might have questions about you." His gaze softened. "I will. Whenever you're ready, I'd like to talk. To him, to you, to explain." She glanced at her son, who was yawning, still half asleep. "We'll see," she said, voice quiet, but not unkind. "One step at a time." He opened the door for them, and as they stepped out into the sunrise, Marta felt the cool morning air brush her face. It carried the promise of a new day, one where she and Mateo no longer lived in the shadow of fear. And somewhere in her heart, a small seed of reconciliation took root, fragile but real, offering the hope that perhaps her son might know his father in a way she never thought possible. She squeezed Mateo's hand and Pilar's arm, guiding them down the steps. The city glistened with early rays, casting the old sidewalks in gold. Behind them, in Suite 203, remnants of heartbreak mingled with the echoes of a life-changing battle. Yet before them stretched the promise of a fresh start, no longer bound by the ghosts of the past, but free to discover if forgiveness and second chances could shine as brightly as the morning sun. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.